Good afternoon, everyone. Glad you're here. We are going to be spending a little bit of time today kind of closing out the fall screener season, but then also gearing up for what I call late fall and then into December as we're going to be taking a look at the WIDA access test. So thanks for being here. Jump in if you have questions or comments that would help each other out. So what we're going to do is just take a moment. Once again, some of you weren't able to be here last month, but just again, kind of reorient ourselves to what the purpose of this group is and to make sure that we all know what resources are available. We're going to be just briefly touching on some of the fall screeners and something that you should have received in your email today. We'll talk about that. We'll spend time talking about the APPLE for grade 5 DLI DBE students. The climate survey will kind of update. Naglieri for grade 2. And then we'll get to the WIDA access and WIDA alternate access planning. So there's a lot to have a conversation around. And hopefully, if you do have questions, that you feel free to jump in. I'll also be staying online afterwards. I know Sarah is here. Stacy, I don't know if you can stay, but we'll just see how it goes. So, all right, let's keep moving. Okay, again, the purpose of having a building assessment coordinator is that you are the key contact person for your building when it comes to the specific assessments that you have been selected for by your principal. And that's how we get this information. We get the principals to share this with us. So you're going to be the organizer at your site. You're going to work to ensure that communication is in place, the best way it works for you and for your school, for your community. And then you're the first point of contact if there are some issues, because you can then, some of them are pretty easy, some of them are not. And so you can funnel them to us. So what happens on this side? Our commitment to you is that we will act as that communication point for the state and for the vendors to make sure that we have clear and correct information, as well as other departments within central office. So in that respect, we're going to serve as the organizer for district-wide assessments, make sure that you have the tools for communication, and then we will work to resolve issues that come up with the platform, the assessment, et cetera, and that we want to ensure that you have the information you need for smooth assessment administration. So who is on this team? First of all, it's the members of the Research Assessment and Improvement Department, myself, Sarah Wollner. Two new members of the team are Deontay Iverson, who is the District Data Literacy Coordinator, and John Robolzi, who is a strategist for the team. He has spent a lot of time with SIP work as well. And then other central office departments that support the work that you do, that we do. Multilingual learners, Ben Kolash and Stacy Will, who is a PST. So it's a team, certainly is a team effort on this end. We appreciate everybody who is involved in supporting you. Now, there are some emails, and I say this, I know that I think everybody knows this, but please make sure that you understand that this is often the quickest way to get an answer, because it's not just one person that it goes to multiple people. Ames Web, we've completed that, but we're going to be looking at the mid-year at some point. Ames Web at FastBridge, same thing is true, fast at. The one that is coming up, of course, is the WIDA access and WIDA alternate access. So using WIDA screener at will get you a team focused on that particular assessment. Others, just so you know, include iReady and Achieve. So we have a general assessment team website. So this is divided into a public side and a staff-only side, so you can get in and out. The only difference is that the staff-only side has just more information, things that typically the general public does not need or care about. So, and then finally, there's an elementary assessment coordinator page where you will find the running agenda. You'll find the slide deck and the archived slide decks you'll also find recordings. The recording of this particular meeting will be posted probably in the next 24 hours. So that will be up there in case you miss something or just want to re-listen to it. So that's some of the supports that we can provide for you. And if you, as always, if you have questions, please let us know. Now, thinking about what we've just experienced, so closing out fall screeners, just kind of a quick check-in. One of the things that I noticed, Sarah may not agree, is that as the Ames Web window went on, there were many fewer, the number of, please delete this because we mixed up students, that number decreased. It's not zero. We appreciate the attention to detail that was happening within classrooms, within screening teams at each of the buildings. So that was definitely something that was noticeable. And then the other noticeable thing was that it appears the number of staff who are like, please, I need access to this, again, has decreased as we would expect it would. Everybody kind of settles into the school year. But keep in mind that as we go forward, if you have people who need access to specific sets of students, please let us know and we'll see what we can do. Again, use those email addresses to get that team approach. If you put a request into IIQ, those typically go just to me, and I try to get to them as quickly as I can, but it's not always a guarantee that, for instance, if I'm out of the office or if I'm in meetings for half a day or more. By sending it to the email address, you get that group approach and you can get a response more quickly. Just want to let you know that things that are still being worked on, there was a small issue, maybe you're not very small, but the numbers from the Spanish version of CBM reading and FastBridge, the national percentiles did not move over to the family reports smoothly, and FastBridge is looking at that. So for instance, you may have had a student who was in the 75th percentile on the reports page, but then if you look at the family reports, it was the 73rd or something similar. Also, please note that if a score does not show up on a FastBridge family report, look to see whether or not the student has a red flag by their score in that particular screening tool. What that means is that the standard error measure is so large that there's really a question as to whether this whole test is valid. How that happens is a student could simply just click through and guess very rapidly, or that's typically what it is in most cases. So FastBridge folks have said what you need to do is just continue with the screening process. Keep it going. So if there are 30 questions in the initial portion, there are 30 questions that continue to actually get to an end result. That particular screening process will take time if you have to continue it, but that is the reason why sometimes students have a score, but it doesn't show up in the family report. Now, while we continue to clean up those kinds of issues and prepare ourselves for the winter screening, we do want to have your feedback. So you should have received in your inbox today a survey. There are 9 questions. We'll talk a little bit more about this, but trying to get at ways that we can improve. And we know that the fall screening window is oftentimes the roughest, simply because everybody's getting in and going and needs things. But we do want to have and value your input. All right, so let's take a look now at things that are in the field. Climate survey is going on through the end of this month. There's a communications document that is in the agenda as well as linked in the slide. And if you're wondering about, wait a minute, I didn't see this on the calendar, keep in mind now we are enjoying the idea of tabs on Google Documents. And so there is a tab called non-academic surveys, as well as the academic and language assessments. So on the assessment calendar, check the second tab to see when screening survey windows are open. Okay. Also, I'm sorry, there is an email that I should tell you about. It's MMSD surveys, plural, at madison.k12.wi.us. That gets you to the climate survey folks. They also have a team approach on that. All right, so let's talk about grade 5 DLI DBE students and Apple. Apple is a language proficiency test for languages other than English. We're going to be talking about access testing. Access is a language proficiency test for English. So if you are in a DLI program, one of the things that the intention is that you become bilingual, that you would benefit from knowing what is your proficiency level. So we're looking at interpersonal listening and speaking, which is interpersonal communications. It's only one section of a 4-section test for grade 5 students. The window opens on the 27th of October and closes on the 14th of November. So it's a short 3-week window. We've got a couple of those going on, but only 5th grade students will be taking this. Most staff who've been involved in the DLI program have been through this, but there will be some information shared in the next week or so. Communication letter home about this, what is needed for students, working with the staff. There's a new staff member in C&I supporting the elementary DLI programs. So we will be working with Jasmine as she is working with your staff. Again, it is tickets, and students will be able to log in through a website. What I'm working on now is trying to get that website linked in Class Link. So all they have to do is click the icon, then put their password in. So Apple takes roughly, I'm going to say between 30 and 40 minutes to actually do the assessment once they have everything set up. So it's not a quick assessment, but it certainly is not as long as doing all 4 domains. So that's coming up. I will be CCing you if you are the Apple coordinator, but also working with the C&I folks to ensure that we get it to all the correct teachers as quickly as possible. Okay, let's jump into the other language proficiency assessment, and that is the WIDA Access and WIDA Alternate Access. Now, just parameters, so let's just start at the beginning. We know that this is a language proficiency assessment. It is for language proficiency in English. It is if you are an English learner, identified as an English learner, it is a mandated assessment. The window this year opens on December 1st. So the 1st of December, and it closes on January 30th. One of the things that we always work to do is to ensure that you are ready to go as soon as possible, because we know that it's always easier to get this done as quickly as possible on the front end rather than trying to play catch up on the back end coming back from break. We also know that there are students whose family will leave in the middle of December, and because they visit family anywhere in the world, they may not be returning for a month or more. And so we'd like to ensure that we get this information as soon as possible. DPI has already pulled the student information, so we have the first go at this. A second, more updated data pull and the generation of labels will happen on the 23rd of October, so that is next week. And AMS, the platform, actually opens for use on the 30th of October. So that still is a long time away from the actual assessment taking place. Typically, you don't have any need for using AMS until much later, but just so you know that it will be open and ready for you when you're ready. All right, a couple of process updates, the rosters, and accommodation lists. Now, every year, what happens is we send out a list of students that are expected to test. So these are the students that are pulled by DPI and placed in that platform. So these are the list of expected students. The second list that you will get is a list of students who have known accommodations, that they actually have an IEP that lists these things. And so you will get that roster and accommodation list by October 27th. When you get that, there is a period that we have, which is a short window to review that. Things like you don't have to look up everybody's IEP. However, if it says in progress, that means that the student's IEP is open and it is not. We need to know that information. So you need to let us know when that gets closed. Also, we don't like it when there are surprises in list of students. So make sure you just review all the students and say, yes, these are our students. Remember that if they are enrolled or no shows, they still are your students. They are your students until they are no longer in IC. When we get those back on the 7th of November, that's when the work on our side begins by uploading all those accommodations into the system. And those, once that's done, then we can print the tickets and we'll get those out to you during the week of November 17th. So we'll be getting that information to you. Now, the initial shipment of materials, printed materials, is going to be on or about November 21st. And that doesn't mean that we'll get that on the 21st of November in the morning in time to make the trucks. We go out to Flom Road and actually sort the boxes when they do come in. We'll get them to you as quickly as possible. Once that is taken place, by on December 1st, additional materials can be ordered. So we get the initial shipment. We will have some extras as a district. So if, for instance, you're ready for and need a third grade writing Tier A booklet, we will have some. Keep in mind that when we place an order, it takes approximately 3 days for us to get it, roughly speaking. So don't think that it's an instantaneous thing. We'd like to keep a supply on hand, but keep in mind that we could run out. So anyways, that's kind of a timeline of how things flow on the access information. Here's a note that there are some changes this year. Actually, one big change. WIDA access for kindergarten. It's a changed assessment. It's undergone the first big change in almost a decade. So those who are going to be administering the WIDA access for kindergarten, please make sure that you complete all the training prior to that December 1st date, because you'll be able to then step right into it on December 1st or shortly thereafter. And speaking of training, here's the process. You will need to have a WIDA account. If you have one, you can jump right in and begin reviewing the modules and taking the quiz, learning, relearning, etc. But you have to be certified. If you don't have an account, if you're new to this, or if you have staff members that are new, please send a request saying, I need to have a WIDA account so I can do the professional development for WIDA access. Send that to widascreener@madison.k12.wi.us. Again, group of people will get you set up and get information about logging in right away. There is something called the Online WIDA Access Administration module. There is a module for alternate access, and there is a module for kindergarten access. What are those? How much do you need to complete? Well, again, you need to have an 80% completion rate. And I'm clicking on that access training overview, and I'm going to be sharing that. So what we've done is we have set up, make this a little bit bigger for you. We have set this up so that you can go through and say, well, what does it look like when I get to the WIDA site? What are the training modules? Which modules do I have to do? Which ones are optional for me to do? So this is in the main assessment on WIDA Access Online Administration module, and lays out approximately the amount of time and then which modules you need to do. There's also the section for kindergarten and for alternate access that gives you kind of parameters about what it is that you are going to be needing to do. So let's go back to the slide deck. I'm going to share that. All right. So you will be, again, you need 80% in order to actually pass the training. All right. Some questions that typically come up. First of all, where do I go if I have questions? Again, if you email me or you email Sarah or Ben, one of the things that happens is we will kind of loop the WIDA screener group back in. So please start with that. If you have new students that are arriving that are potentially English learners or are absolutely English learners, there is a process. Remember that you have to go through this process regardless of whether we're testing the access, giving the access test or not. So the process is enroll, then they take the home language survey, and depending on the answers there, they may need to or may not need to take the WIDA screener. So that nothing of that changes from what we're doing right now, regardless of what season or time of year it is. If the WIDA screener indicates that the students are English learners, they are expected to take access. So if they arrive on November 15th, enroll, go through the process, December 1st, their name will be in there and they will be expected to go ahead and take the access test. However, I am very much opposed to having a student arrive and the next day, because it's close to the deadline, they have to sit down and take a test. Welcome to Madison, sit down and take a test. Not my favorite setting. So there is a cutoff date that because we know it takes a while to get all this in place. This year's cutoff date is if the student arrives prior to January 23rd, which is a Friday. It's a Friday before the access window closes. If they arrive before that, then they are expected to take the access. If they arrive on the 23rd or after that following week, if you have the ability to test them, that's great, but we're not expecting that. So the question also is, who gives the WIDA alternate access tests? Is it the CC staff? Is it the ESL staff? Who is it that gives that? And I can't tell you what is the best answer, because it really makes a difference as to who works well, who works the best with the student in an academic setting. And so it could be, and it should be, really a team effort. Sitting down and planning this out and making sure that the right people are in the position to administer the test. It could mean that both CC staff and ESL staff are being trained for WIDA access or the alternate access. All right, I'm going to just hold right there and see if there are any questions about the access test. We're almost done with the presentation, but want to give you an opportunity. Yes, Barbara, go ahead.
I have a question. We have a student and we're thinking about the alternative access for him. He's nonverbal autistic and he's in first grade. How do we determine if he takes the alternate access or not?
Tim, can I
You want
start
me to take,
with an
or
answer?
I can
Please.
take it too.
Yeah, well,
Good.
Stacy, I'll let you say most of it, but there is a flow chart, a participation decision tree on that specific answer that I'm going to pop into the chat, and then I'm going to let Stacy take it from here.
So the short version of it is that it's an IEP decision. So it's a student that has to essentially be instructed on the alternate standard, so not grade level standards, and that's IEP is written that way. So the IEP is written to align with the alternate standards, and then there's an additional checklist, I guess, as a part of the IEP that goes through. It has to be like they have to meet criteria in 3 areas. So a student, it's hard to say, but it has to be like they have to be greater than 2 to 3 standard deviations below on a cognitive assessment, and then that alternate standards. Like there's a couple prompts that the IEP team needs to discuss. If they're alternate in first grade, it's tricky, right? K1 and 2 are tricky because there's no other statewide assessments for those kids. So usually we say, like, if a kid is taking a forward exam, they're taking regular access. If they're taking the alternate, the DLM, then they would take the alternate access in first grade. We don't have that, right? So there's been a big push. I mean, in our department, there's been a big push for the early, the youngest kiddos to do the regular, to default to that first. But it ultimately is an IEP team decision. That's a lot of words to say that.
The reason why I'm asking also is because he is nonverbal, and I know when I gave him like the kindergarten last year, it was very hard to get him to get answers for it. That's why that's why we were wondering about the alternate for first grade for this year.
Yeah, I would say if you start with case manager, program support teacher, and see what the IEP looks like. Right now, it's sometimes is a bigger. It's not just a different box to check to make them take an alternate test if the
Okay.
IEP isn't written that way. You know what I mean?
Okay, that's what we were wondering about. That's why I'm just asking, just to make sure
Yep.
on that.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. That's why we're here. Patty?
I just wanted to speak to Barb with her question about a student needing accommodations for the access test. I had a similar. I have students who are autistic and nonverbal, and we went through a very extensive process with the paper access test, because the accommodations that we could make with the online access did not feel appropriate to let the student show what they could do in English. And I would encourage Barb, it's quite the rabbit hole to dive down into, but if you look into the training information about the paper access test, there's a lot of different accommodations that you can add in when a student is taking the test on paper that are not possible with the online test.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding access? All right, let's finish up today. We're going to move on. We're going to talk about grade 2 Naglieri. And this is the Naglieri General Abilities Test. It is a assessment that the Advanced Learning Department uses. It is a problem-solving assessment. It is not an intelligence test, okay? It is what are your skills around solving problems and puzzles? So all grade 2 students are going to be taking the nonverbal portion of the Naglieri. This AL staff that supports your students in your building will be working with your grade 2 team to ensure that things are set up. and that the testing is taken in a timely manner. They will be sending out results in December to families. And just so you're aware, it's likely that there will be a few students in your second grade that will be taking the verbal and the quantitative portions of the Naglieri based on their nonverbal scores. The window should look familiar, October 27th through the 14th of November, simply because that's the same window as the Apple. So even though the vast majority of students in your school are not going to be testing, there are a couple assessments that are going on at that same time. So, all right. Question now starts coming up as we get deeper and deeper into the school year. What happens if a family chooses to opt their student out? Can they opt out? First of all, both the state and the school board allow students to be opted out of mandated tests. The only exception is the WIDA access test. There is no ability to opt out. Now, opting out happens in a lot of different ways. It could simply mean that what we prefer is the family writes a note or sends an email saying, I wish to opt my son Tim out of the access test or out of forward test or out of XYZ, being specific about the test. When you get those kinds of emails or written notes, if it's a written note, please scan it. And send it on to me. And if it's an email, please just forward that to me. We're keeping track of those as we always do for a report to the school board in June. And then I'll let you know that has been recorded. That does a couple things. On our end, we have to go through a process in which DPI asks, why did these students not take the test when it's required? And so we have to put in a non-tested reason. Here's where the difference is between forward and access. Access, you cannot opt out. However, there is I call it a euphemism of a not tested reason called declined to test. So that is an option, and we respect families' rights and requests. And so please let us know if you get any of those. Again, please have them be specific and not just say, I choose to opt my child out of all standardized tests, because that is, I can't accept that particular option. So send that on to me and we'll take care of it. And I will respond to you and saying, yep, got it, taken care of. All right. We got one last thing. And again, I said this at the start, help us get better. We want to continue to improve our response to you, our support of you, students and families. And so there is a 9-item survey. We appreciate your input and value it. So if you could share that with us, that would be great. Let us know what questions you have. And in a moment, I'll stop recording and we'll just open it up for everyone. So first of all, thank you for being here. And I'm going to, let's see, we're going to just stop recording. Thank you very much.